G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Leanne Lai Lacaba from 2XU, based in Cebu, Philippines. Thanks for your time today, Leanne.
Yeah, happy to be here, Troy.
Let's start with how we know each other. We both use the platform Matchmaker, not for dating, but I guess it's dating for podcasting, isn't it? It's a terrible name.
It is. I've said it to a client the other day. Like, she's like, "Oh, where do you get your podcast?" I'm like, Matchmaker.fm. So I like to say
stalk on dating apps. Yeah. Well, tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
2XU is a outsourcing business, basically, where we hire, train, and manage executive assistants. Well, now AI-empowered executive assistants to basically get our clients to scale more than themselves. A lot of it is that focus of like every single month, we basically have our EAs take care of our clients so then they can grow their business without running it.
That's great. Now, I've had a team in the Philippines. My first team member, I think, started 7 or 8 years ago now. We've got 4 over there and 1 in Pakistan, and they're all excellent. As you obviously clearly know, English is superb, great work ethic. I think is that 83% of the population is Catholic there in the Philippines?
Yeah.
Very loyal, all university educated. And I had John Jonas actually on the podcast from onlinejobs.ph, and he made a really good point of that a lot of people have the misconception that you're ripping Filipinos off by using them and paying them such a much lower hourly rate than, say, the US, but it's using the arbitrage. The cost of living is much different. And I'm sure we'll touch on this, but he made a great point that you're actually supporting the families because, especially Manila, it can be 2 hours one way just into the office. So it's 4 hours a day traveling. And so what tends to happen is a lot of grandparents raise the kids. And by being able to work at home, the parents have that opportunity to bring the kids up as opposed to the grandparents. So there's a greater bond and experience with the parents and the kids.
Very true. And it's part of purposely why 2XU since the start has been work from home. Like we have meetups to make it less lonely and of course build culture, but everyone is working from home. Actually, that purpose of like making sure that they have time for their family.
That's great because there are some outsourcing businesses there that have their own centers. People have to travel to them, but it sounds like you're well ahead of the curve before COVID of the remote work from home can work.
Yeah, for sure.
How did you start out?
Technically, speaking of remote work, I technically started when I was 15 years old. I did freelance jobs on online jobs of page. So it's funny that you mentioned him. That's where I got started a lot of it. And then when I was 18, started working for this random American company that did publishing for books. And then at 20, I got the idea of like, hey, I want to start my own business. And at that point, I was CEO of that publishing company. I grew enough basically in the short couple of span because there was a smaller business. And when I said that to my boss at that time, he's like, why not partner with me? Why not keep it? He called it keeping it in the family, quote unquote. I did start 2XU, co-founded it with him. And it's been 4 amazing years since then.
Fantastic. And you were based in the US at the time when you were running that publishing company?
No, all based from working from home.
Oh, wow. Great. Fantastic. 4 years ago. So how old were you when you started the company? Did you say 23?
23.
Great. Do you have any key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the last 4 years?
It's been consistent, and it's even interesting because we did a price change this year. It's been consistent at about 50% to 70% even. Well, of course, the first year, it seems like 100% growth. It's been that range in the last couple of years.
50 to 70% per annum growth. Holy shit, that is great. Well done, Leanne.
Thank you.
What about number of full-time team members you started with and where you're at now?
Technically started 2XU just with me, just to back up like myself, easy enough to remember. And currently I have about 32 employees.
And all full-time equivalent or? Great, fantastic. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
It's still ongoing. It's still kind of like a pretty good mixture of putting a goal in front of myself and trying to get to it. But a pretty good moment a couple of times has always been whenever our EAs are able to take care of their kids. Like when they're able to take a day off or focus on it. And because we've set it up with our clients where, hey, they're a mom or they have these priorities, they might not always be available, but they always catch up. That's always my feeling of like, oh, okay, cool. I'm taking care of our people.
Does that answer the next question? What does success look like to you?
I've always thought success is by doing good for others. It's funny because like I came from a very hardcore people-pleasing personality. So I had to redefine that for myself. It's not making other people happy in spite of myself, but like making people happy as the intention. So that's kind of what it is for me.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
I create a lot of content. That's kind of a lot of how we've been able to grow so much. So I create like two main pieces of content on YouTube every single week. And my amazing team repurposes all of that. Same thing about the definition of success. It's educating people to get to either they want to be a client or they can do it on themselves. But the point is that you've moved them forward versus where they were at before they met you.
And how did you fund the business?
Very much literally, I was in the other business and then we got our first client and I quickly made the switch. It wasn't really needed much funding just because we got that first client almost out of the blue, even before we officially had a website and everything else. We had someone interested.
Right. So you haven't had to take on bank finance or other investors apart from you and your co-founder, Tom?
No, so far not.
Well done. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I would go through it differently. If I had more funds, I would go through it differently rather than kind of scraping by. That would be the biggest thing is I would still do it, but I would do it in a way where people can have more things instead of me trying to balance everything in my head every single time I hired.
Yep. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
The biggest one was sadly what happened about more than a year ago now, where I didn't hire a manager fast enough. We were at about 15, 16 executive assistants, and I didn't hire a manager because I thought I was going to be able to do it myself. And sadly, a couple of people left. Like a group of them left because they weren't feeling supported. They weren't feeling that my original intention of taking care of them. If anything, if you feel like you are having a recurring thing of clients every single month, it is time to start hiring a manager out because it'll hurt your employees more than it'll hurt you. And then later on, of course, then hurt you.
Of course. Yeah, that's a really good point. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
It's definitely like leadership and management. Like it's dealing with people who can get sick almost every single week, or of course, like hiring the right match for our clients. That has been kind of the biggest thing that I've had to really work on and develop.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
It's not being able to set up the right systems right before, because we had it where we had in 1 or 2 weeks, I think we had like 10 clients all of a sudden that we closed. And then I had to stumble through basically because I didn't have the systems to be able to support that. And that's kind of the least one, is not being prepared for all of a sudden growth.
Do you find it difficult to define and execute a clear strategy for your small business? Does your team support your strategy? You know you are ready to create the right environment to boost your team's performance. Our 80-day business transformation program is designed for small business owners like you, with 5 to 30 team members who are ready for growth. Every day, you'll receive a short email with a handful of growth actions. You'll invest 30 minutes each week in your one-on-one coaching session, tackling your specific growth challenges with one of our experienced growth guides, business owners themselves. Boost your confidence, your team's performance, and grow your small business with ease with our business transformation program at growsmallbusiness.com. What do you love most about growing a small business?
The people, for sure. Like I love it when our people have aha moments, when they feel we have multiple EAs who, when they come into the company, they're shocked that it's not high paced, and they came from a high paced company where some of them had their bosses cursing at them. Because like not only do we vet our EAs, we also vet our clients to make sure that they're also culture fit. It's that moment of like, they're like, oh, okay, I can be a human being here.
Yeah, that's great. What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
It's definitely being able to grow a team. Like when I was running the publishing company, we were able to get by with just 3-4 people. And now I have a whole team of 10 people of like support team, management, marketing. And that has taken a lot of my brain power off basically of just running the business.
Yeah. The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
The art of delegation. I would always say that. Of course, we're an executive assistant company, so I have to say it, but it is one of the things that can help you grow out of yourself of being stuck, is mastering the art of delegation.
And what are the main activities you see your clients delegating to your team?
It's mostly been, so it's a mix. So on one end, we have clients who just delegate their life to their EA of like managing their travel, their clients, their life. And on the flip side, we then also have EAs who are managing their whole operations, like managing their sales team, marketing team. So it really depends on what they need, but it's basically duplicating one part of their brain. So then that frees them up so they can do other things.
Great. Yeah. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
The main one is always focus on culture. Like I've hired people with a lot of experience and I thought they would be a perfect fit. And 2 weeks later, have everyone hating on them. So that's going to happen once or twice. Always focus on what is the culture that you're trying to build long term, and then hiring based off of that. Because anyone can learn anything, but their personality and the character that they bring into the table is a highlight. And if you hire a bad apple and keep them, people will think that's your standard, basically. Yep. And I've seen that happen to myself and other business owners, friends that I have, where they hire someone because they have a really good experience, but they are crappy to work with, and everyone started to hate on them. And then, of course, productivity and everything else goes out. Culture culture fit first.
And how do you test for that vet or filter in the recruitment process to make sure they're a good cultural fit?
We have a lot of filters that we do that. One of them is actually having them go through, it's more of a manifestation, I would say manifestation woo-woo kind of video where it's the Strangest Secret by escaping right now who it's from. But it's basically talking about like you become what you think about. We have that them write an essay of like what they think about that. That's their first filter of like, if they just created a summary, we know that they're not a critical thinker because we say, what, write your thoughts. On the flip side, if they tell us like a story and then they actually applied what they learned from the video, that tells us that they're someone who's constantly growing, and that's someone who can think for themselves. We have little tests like that throughout the whole process. And then when they get to the final interview with me, I'm asking like really hard, okay, what would you do in this situation? What would you do in this? If a client says something you don't agree with, how do you deal with that? There's a lot of little tests to filter people out if they don't fit.
Yep, they're great behavioral questions. And that video that they watch and then write about, where did that come from? Did you say that came from a book?
Actually, no, I'm not really 100% sure if it came from a book, but it's just an audio that we have them listen. And it's been on our recruitment process even when I was still in publishing, and I carried it over basically.
Yeah, great. I've never heard of that. What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Build it into the system. I've learned that also the hard way of like trying to like, oh no, it's just going to be me pushing it into the culture. But I've made it in part of our daily system where people feel that they're going to be checked in on, people feel supported basically in what it is that they do. And it's part of, for our managers, it's more than a checklist for them. They know that's how to take care, but it's also a way for them to not forget to take care of our people that way.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
A lot of it is putting hard stops on myself because I know I tend to be an overworker I used to be working at 80 hours a week sometimes. Like I have, and my assistant knows this, my Wednesday afternoons are off, which is why I'm a little bit refreshed right now versus like I could have been if we had this interviewed other days. Wednesdays are off, and then usually Saturday afternoons are off, and of course Sundays. So I've put in hard boundaries. So then in my head, if I am still working, that's my fault because everything else is set up for me to be able to succeed on that end.
Yeah. How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
So much. I'm a huge reader. I've I think I have close to 500 something physical books, and not including the ones that are on my Kindle.
Wow.
I'm a huge fan.
Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Had a lot, other than my co-founder, who's basically a second dad to me at this point, working with him in the last 10 years. I've had amazing business coaches. One that I have right now is Dan McPherson, who has helped me develop a lot of the leadership mindset I've been working on the last year. Online, of course, so many people that I follow, like Gary Vaynerchuk, Brene Brown. I've seen them as my own mentors. And a lot of female mentors as well. A lot of other business owner friends that I've been surrounded myself with, and that I can just ask questions when I need to.
Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
Currently, not really.
All right, Leanne, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Taking care of yourself, but then of course you can add systems to that. But I always say that you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you can't, then it's harder to do it.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
E-Myth. That's the book that changed my brain to like, oh, I can start a business. Actually is the catapult to XU.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's my favorite #1 book I recommend anyone read if they're thinking of starting, let alone growing a business. And I reread that every year or so. Any great podcasts, online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
It's mostly been a lot of just anytime someone recommends something to me, I don't really have one that I can pinpoint just because or something that I stumbled upon as well. So not really one.
Have you read any of the Alex Hormozi books?
Yes, I'm actually reading. I'm in the middle of 100 Million Leads right now.
Yeah, it's great. And his podcast is excellent as well.
Yep.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Invest in a really good, transparent project or task tracker. Like right now, we're using Notion. Before we had Notion, it was just a mess trying to get everything set up. But because we have a way where we can document and track things, it has helped immensely.
Yeah, I've had a look at Notion. It just didn't really resonate with me. It's very complex and sophisticated, obviously. And I guess it just, if you invest the time to set it up properly, a few people have mentioned on the cast they use Notion for Teams.
We started pretty early before all the complications. So we kind of grew with Notion. That's kind of the luck there, because we started with like Notion as the very basic as it was, and then it grew into where it is now.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day 1 of starting out 4 years ago?
Hire the right people.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Leanne. I really enjoyed our chat. Congratulations to you and Tom on the growth over the last 4 years, starting on your own, now 32 full-time equivalents, and helping a lot of small business owners around the world with their second brain. I saw on your website, as you mentioned earlier. So that's great. Well done.
Yeah, thank you so much, Troy. I had fun.
We're getting some great iTunes reviews. For those listening, please pop over to your podcast app and leave us a review.